Who are you?
My name is Bond. James Bond.
Welcome back to Ranked, everybody. I'm Charles.
I'm McCurdy.
I'm Patterson.
I'm Scott.
I'm Nathan.
Tonight we are discussing Diamonds Are Forever, starring Sean Connery's back.
He's back.
What?
Yes.
Remember that new world I talked about last week with OHMSS? Yeah, never mind about all that. James Bond goes full Austin Powers and Diamonds Are Forever. A story that puts 007 in the role of the Fonz who jumps the out of a shark. I could lay out the ridiculous plot that is near impossible to follow, mixed with all kinds of stuff that makes no sense, but why ruin the fun? All you need to know is that Sean Connery's back for one last go-around with ridiculous and freaky LGBTQ assassins, a hilarious lunar rover chase, Jimmy Dean the Sausage Man, and Guy Hamilton doing everything possible to make sure your brain severs ties with Peter Hunt's Honor Majesty's Secret Service by going the complete opposite direction. Anybody that thought that dark, stark, and depressing film wasn't all that much fun, eat your fucking heart out, because Diamonds Are Forever is the ultimate action comedy in the Bondverse. All that being said, McCurdy, what you got for us?
Oh my lord. That is a very perfect intro to this film, for sure.
Why try to make sense of this thing?
No.
There's no point.
There's
we
a
could
lot of
spend
things. We'll
all
get into
night.
it.
Like, we could spend the next 6 hours pointing out things that make no sense.
I have at least
But
I
this
have at least
movie's
three
way too
things
much
we're gonna
fucking
talk
fun
about.
to be bogged down with anything that makes sense.
All right, so let's get into it. Let me answer your questions. So 1971, the first 70s Bond film, right? Remember I talked about last time, we talked about the last movie is really kind of the true last James Bond movie, and the fact that it's during the whole height of the spy genre being popular. Now we're into the 70s, the 60s are over, and now we're into the end, the final film in the Connery era of Bond films. It's also considered the end of the Blofeld trilogy, so to speak. So last time, like Charlie said, we talked about Lisenby, why he didn't sign he had a 7-picture contract, he didn't sign it. So then this leaves Harry Saltzman and Albert Broccoli in a conundrum. They're like, shit, we need to get a new Bond. So they start testing out other people right away. One of those people, and it kind of goes well with the film, is Adam West. And you may know Adam West from Family Guy, as well as the 60s Batman. But Adam West instantly was like, no, you have to have a Brit play this character. It can't be a Yank. So they keep looking, and they actually end up on this actor named John Gavin. John Gavin was probably most known for Psycho. He wasn't the killer, but he was the guy in that movie.
The boyfriend, yeah.
Yeah, he was the boyfriend. But ultimately, United Artists, with everything that went on publicly with the last film and all of that stuff, ultimately was like, no, we can't have the last thing we had last time. We need to make sure we have a hit on our hands. So they get Connery back. They say, no, you have to get Sean Connery back. And they'd already signed John Gavin to the role.
Real quick, though, before you go on. So I understand that OHMSS was not a success. Is there anything, I mean, is it like the numbers just weren't there because we lost Sean? It was a little more depressing. Were the reviews not that good?
Yeah, I think it was just not what people were expecting out of the Bond film. And I think mostly it was, you had a different guy playing Bond. And then also not to mention that, I don't think I went into this the last episode, but Lisenby didn't really, like, he would go on interviews. He was bearded, he had long hair, he looked like a hippie, and he would literally tell people, oh, I'm not coming back. Now, if you're watching a franchise film and you're like, well, the star of the movie's not even coming back, why should I even bother watching this movie? This sounds like this is the end of the franchise. I mean, that's going to hurt the box office. So they're like, no, we need to get Connery back. So United Artists says money's not an option. So they end up paying him $1.2 million for Connery to come back. I've heard also $2 million. It's somewhere in that range. But that's a lot of money, especially for that time. Actors generally were not paid $1 million contracts back that period of time. I think the most famous one of that, or the first person to get paid like $1 million that most people talk about, is Marlon Brando in the first Superman movie.
Sean Connery donated it, right?
Yes. So Connery, being a Scotsman, he decides to create, he even told this to the press, he was creating a grant for Scottish artists and writers. So it became a part of his trust that he would already started, but he was going to use that money anyway. So he took the 1.2 million, he put it in this trust for Scottish writers and artists so they didn't have to leave the country to get the money for the grant. And also, he got a 2-picture deal out of it as well. Only one of those movies were actually made. But it also gave him the option to say, oh, yeah, I can do whatever movie. So, of course, he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come back. Also returning, Guy Hamilton, who directed Goldfinger. But also, Charles Gray returns. And you may remember Charles Gray in You Only Live Twice, but he had a knife in his back. So it's the same actor in another Blofeld movie only 2 movies ago, and they bring him back.
He was the victim of knife in the back, can't run very fast
Yes.
guy.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So he comes back. And then in the role of Tiffany Case, the Bond girl, we have Jill St. John. And the other Bond girl, Lana Wood. Both, ironically, were alumni of the Batman 60s TV show. Jill St. John was most known for being the first Molly. In the show, the Molly was like the henchwoman. In every episode, there was like a hot girl that they would cast that was, a henchwoman to the Riddler or the Penguin or whoever it was that week. She was the first to do that. Lana Wood would also be one of the henchwomen.
Pause. So McCurdy has some of his information twisted just a little bit. First of all, Jill St. John played a character named Molly, but the category of female henchwomen to the typically male bad guys were known as Molls. So Molly was a Moll, but not all Molls were Mollys. Got it? Secondly, the aptly named Lana Wood was never in the 1960s Batman TV show, but she did date Adam West at the time, who played Batman. So while she wasn't in Batman, Batman was most definitely in her. Moving on.
And these two women did not like each other. There's a long, drawn-out story I could tell you dealing with Lana Wood's sister's husband and all this other stuff. And if you know a little bit of Hollywood history, you kind of know where that's at. You can look it up yourself. But
I just want to hear about how they are also alumni of Sean Connery's penis.
They are. So it's been Lana Wood and Connery apparently were dating at this time. Connery, if you remember, I think we talked about it in You Only Live Twice. He was actually married. His wife did stunts and stuff for the film. At this point, he's in a divorce. He was dating Lana Wood. I think it was rumored that he slept with St. John as well during this film. Let me go into that as well, because Connery and a lot of the production crew in this film did not get a lot of sleep because they were filming in Vegas. So they were doing a lot of gambling. Connery was playing golf. Like, he never got any sleep. He'd say, like, pretty much on the weekends he crashed, but throughout the entire week when they were during filming, he was gambling and playing golf and probably drinking heavily and banging the co-stars. and
Getting plenty of plenty.
Oh, yeah, plenty. Oh, plenty.
Yeah. The best line in the film by far is the...
Hi, I'm Plenty.
But of course you are.
Plenty O'Toole.
Named after your father, perhaps?
Plenty O'Toole is straight up the male equivalent of Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they give it to a chick, and he's just like, that doesn't add up. You must have been named after your father.
Well,
Connery apparently even held up production because he was winning so much. So he would go to get his winnings, and they're like, Connery, you need it. We're shooting. Howard Hughes, he was a filmmaker. He was a entrepreneur. I mean, this guy did everything. He made movies. He flew airplanes. I think Scorsese did a whole movie on him, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
right?
The Aviator.
The
Aviator, right?
Leo.
He had done all these. He
It's
was
the way of
a
the
big
future.
dude. He had made a shit ton of money. But what's famous about him is that he owned the Desert Inn in Vegas. He owned several of the hotels in Vegas. But he hid himself away from the world for many years. Like, he just decided, I'm going to live in my penthouse and not see anybody and just live there and run my empire from my penthouse. So there's a lot of those employees never saw him ever. He just hid in his penthouse. And also, I want to point out, if you've ever played the game New Vegas,
yes,
there's a character in New Vegas that is referenced to. Because every time I watch this movie, I'm like, oh, I want to play New Vegas now.
Yeah,
yes.
I caught that too, and I like flipped my.
Yeah, so that's a reference to Howard Hughes, and he was friends with like Albert Broccoli, who was one of the producers. So when Broccoli was cut, because they originally Richard Baybaum wrote a different script, of course, because they were going to make this a direct sequel to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That didn't happen, right? So they had a different writer come on. And originally, it was going to be Goldfinger's twin was going to be the villain in this movie. They were going to make it so much attached to Goldfinger. They wanted to have Goldfinger's twin. They wanted to bring back that actor.
They were going to bring back Gert to
They were going to bring back Gert to play his twin in this movie originally. But then Broccoli had his dream of his friend Howard Hughes, and he was looking out the window from his penthouse, and he looked in, and it wasn't Howard Hughes. And he thought, oh, wouldn't that be an interesting story if Howard Hughes, because no one's seen Howard Hughes, so how do you know that Howard Hughes is actually running his empire? So he thought, wouldn't it be neat if, like, a villain, Blofeld, took over Howard Hughes and was running his empire and using it for his own clandestine,
So
operations.
HH became
Yeah.
WW.
Exactly. Very good. I didn't even think about that. But what's even funnier is that Jimmy Dean, Sausage King, I believe he was a country music star. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So he was actually working for Howard Hughes in Vegas. And so when they went to Vegas to scout or whatever, they saw Jimmy Dean's act and they're like, that's our Willard Whyte. That's who's playing Willard Whyte.
And he's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
He's a lot of fun.
Baja.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have anything in Baja.
Yeah. Tell him he's
but-
fired.
Seems angry the whole time.
Bert Saxby? Tell him he's fired.
He was actually worried when he made the movie because he knew that they would send the Bond films up to his penthouse. So he's like, oh, the guy I'm working for, I'm doing a parody of him.
Yeah.
So I always just think that's interesting, but I think it's good for the context because I don't think people realize like that was a thing that happened back then. But yeah, he was living in the Desert Inn during when this filming's part, and even so much so that Broccoli was in contact with Howard Hughes, and they would say, "Hey, we got word from the penthouse that anything that Albert Broccoli needs to make this movie, we'll give it to him." Essentially. So that was one of the reasons they were able to make this. Some of the
Can you
stunts and
imagine
things in this
having
movie.
somebody like that on your side
That's amazing.
for anything?
Yeah.
Elon Musk, he really likes the Ranked podcast.
He wants
And
to
he's
invest.
completely opened the doors for it. Like, what?
Cool,
We do
let's shoot the next-
anything.
Let's shoot the next one on Mars, guys.
I watched these movies as a kid in complete random order. It was like I'd get a new VHS from Target every time I go for like $10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I watched them completely out of order. And for 10, 12-year-old little Charles, it was like, okay, wait, I thought that guy was Blofeld, but then that's Blofeld, but then that's also Blofeld, but then Blofeld has doubles. It was so odd as a kid that I always attributed the Bond world to something closer to Batman, right? Where don't even keep track of Batman and the Joker, right? Because every new story is just going to be, well, forget everything that's already happened, and it's just like, just take these characters and put them in a new place.
Yeah.
When you do watch them in order, though, there is a clear logic between them all. And we pointed out how certain things don't add up, like in Secret Service, they don't recognize each other. There are certain things that you have to ignore to just enjoy the show. But there is kind of a through line throughout. And
Yeah, definitely through the Connery films, it adds up.
but with Connery, what's interesting is you only live twice. And then, they do kind of try to pretend like Secret Service never happened. But then when you get to Diamonds Are Forever, it's almost like you wish that You Only Live Twice had been given the Diamonds Are Forever treatment, where You Only Live Twice is fun. Same old disclaimer. Love all these movies. But Diamonds Are Forever makes up for being awful by being fucking hilarious and being so much fun and not giving a shit. Right? Whereas You Only Live Twice would have benefited almost by jumping that shark and being even more funny and joke-filled and ridiculous. This Blofeld, compared to the You Only Live Twice Blofeld, is fun. I don't think I would necessarily... I'm always going to opt for like the dark, stark, and depressing stuff, so I do think that Secret Service Blofeld is a more diabolical guy. That Blofeld and Hidden Blofeld, I think, are just superior on quality terms. But when it comes to goofiness... If only they could have brought in Charles Gray to be Blofeld in You Only Live Twice and had him throughout the movie. The guy has a face of putty and like he's straight up the Joker. Like he grins at one point. He's so dramatic. At one point he like picks up that phone and he turns to camera and he's like, "Yes, bring my battle sup."
This is not the madness!
One more word, Met, and I'll have you shot. Get back to your post. Prepare my battle sub immediately.
He's like the Joker. He's fun to watch be evil.
This guy cross-dresses. This guy cross-dresses in this film.
Yes.
That's true.
That's the best part.
In the
It's
same
so
way that
funny.
Bond is somebody different in every scene, so is Blofeld. Like they're literally the same
I love this
but
film.
different. And he straight up cross-dresses to get out of it. He didn't need to do that, but he did because he's just a crazy, maniacal, super
The last
super
three
evil
movies
genius.
have lowered Blofeld's peg for me.
Yeah.
Every one.
I disagree. I think the second Blofeld's a little like the second scene Blofeld's definitely better than the first one in my opinion.
Yeah, I think You Only Live Twice Blofeld is just like nothing. Like I wish they would have taken his cartoonishness and they would have spread it across the whole movie. Oh, they did that with this movie.
Yeah,
they took
yeah.
cartoon Blofeld, who's just fun. Like, straight up, they have a scene where there's two Blofelds, and Bond has to choose which one is the real Blofeld. And like, it's just like he can do anything now. Like, he's just a super
I like the
evil
idea
genius.
of him having multiple Blofelds. Scott, the scene that you're talking about is one of the strangest, most illogical scenes in the film. Because if you remember,
that's why I love
Tiffany Case is talking to Q, which it's like, why are you here? Like, Q, what are you doing here, bud?
Yeah.
He's here for some reason.
Because audiences like Q.
Just
that's
rigging Vegas. Why wouldn't you? If you were Q, why the would
well,
you
they
not
like that
rig
Q
Vegas?
guy, so let's just have him.
He
in the
made
movie.
everything. He made all the money.
Yeah, but then Tiffany
slot
Case
machine.
is like talking to Mr. Q and like, maybe you can help me out and all this other stuff. And then all of a sudden she looks over and she's like,
cat.
Wait, I'll be right back. And then
she
goes,
recognizes the cat.
Look what the cat dragged in.
But
It's
she
the
never
cat.
met the
She's
cat.
never
She
seen
doesn't
Blofeld.
know
She
who
doesn't know
Blofeld
any,
is.
like,
I'm delighted to meet you, Miss Case.
she has no idea. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, you could maybe make the assumption that, oh, she maybe met Blofeld in this operation, but it's like there's no evidence to suggest that. So
I mean,
it's
the
just a very
chauffeur
weird
does
scene.
then shove her into the car, so it's like,
Yeah.
But she's like,
do they
but she
recognize it?
actively looking for that person. Like she leaves to look
But
for
that's what I mean.
the woman and the
that's
cat.
that's one element in a massive list of shit that doesn't make sense or add up. But
Yeah.
I'm so willing to forgive it because this movie isn't trying to be serious. Every movie before this, you can critique, you can approach it logically and be like, nah, and that's what we've done for 6 episodes is like, none of this stuff makes sense and none of this adds up. But that's in movies that ask you to take them seriously. This movie never asks you to take it seriously. Not once.
When it comes to movies, I'm naturally illogical. So when I see a motherfucker walk through a casino with a cat, I'm like, surely he's powerful. That makes sense. That's how it tied together.
I don't know what.
How do you react when you see an elephant playing slots?
Perfect. I love it. Makes
One
sense.
time we talked about, I think we talked about You Only Live Twice, and I was talking about how a trend in these films is that if the movie goes too fantastical, the next movie is going to be dark and grim, or is it's going to be more realistic. By that logic, though, does that mean that if the film goes too dark, that the next movie is going to be lighthearted? We'll have to see, because I'm wondering if that's the case in some of these later films.
It's as if Sean Connery came in to grease the slide for Roger Moore to be goofy as f***. It's like you have this weird transition. It's like stuff got really dark, and then it's like reset the clock and open the door to straight up Bond goofiness. The irony is that, most people would associate Bond goofiness with Roger Moore, but we're seeing here that Sean Connery is the one who introduced it. He ushered in the era of
he anchored
goofiness.
the concept.
Absolutely. And I gotta say, it's fun.
This movie's a slate wiping.
Yeah,
totally.
It's like try to compare the next Bond movie and the next actor to this shit.
Yeah.
I want to ask Patterson specifically though about Blofeld, because you were very harsh on Secret Service Blofeld. And this is like on the spectrum of Blofeld I laid out last week.
I'm kind of with Nans on this one, where it's like it almost would have been better if I had just not watched this with any context whatsoever. This is the movie that like my wife, who hates Bond, can't stand watching these movies. This is the movie that she pictures in her head. And to that effect, like I think Blofeld, more so than I would say any other element of the movie, he basically is Dr. Evil. Like it's just goofiness. I think it's more entertaining. It's like I thought I had it figured out the last episode, like what I want to see in Blofeld. After I was like, okay, that's what I don't want to see in him. And now this movie is making me kind of take it in a completely different direction of like, maybe it's okay to just have a campy Blofeld. And maybe it's better for him to be that. Like, I think on your spectrum, I think Flesh and Blood Blofeld, the more you bring him into the light, the goofier he gets.
He has to escalate.
Yeah.
He can't just be a guy running an allergy clinic. He has to be capable of literally taking over the life of some billionaire in a penthouse to take advantage of his money in order to pull off another devious world-stealing plot, right? This is the summer blockbuster of Bond, not the dark independent film that we saw last time. Like, no, nobody's crying over a dead wife in this movie. This movie, again, the subtitle of this movie is F it.
Yeah.
None of this makes
really
sense.
Is.
It's just like at one point, like, please, somebody explain to me the scene where Bond is, again, pretending to be somebody else. He's doing the radiation shields. He's checking things out. He leaves, and suddenly he's on, I don't know, a movie set where they're like faking the moon landing.
What was?
And they're like, there he is behind those rocks. Like that's straight up out of Austin Powers. He gets into a lunar mobile and he
rover.
busts out. And I just laugh the whole time because every time they cut to that moon mobile, it's like, me, and there's Bond. There's James Bond, super spy, in that little bubble top. Me,
I love it.
It's
fucking
hysterical.
When they say behind the rocks, the astronauts don't even
They keep
react
moving
like normal
slowly.
people.
they
They're like,
stay
we're
in
still
character
on the moon.
when they're trying to catch
They're
him.
staying
They're
in
like,
character
no.
trying to catch him, and that's also like for context.
brilliant.
Remember we talked about the space race in the last one, or in You Only Live Twice. Like it's still going on. People are still going to the moon at that point. So I think the idea was like, oh, they're faking the moon landing because a lot of people still think that today.
Yeah.
But what's the question is, Willard Whyte, did he decide to fake the moon landing, or was that Blofeld? Also, I just want to mention, why did Blofeld put a sculpture or a miniature of Baja California?
Baja California. I haven't got a thing at Baja.
Exactly.
That makes no
Who
sense.
did that? What assistant of his was like, well, I thought you wanted your diorama up to date all the time. So when you made the petroleum division, I went ahead and made the model and I put it in your little diorama, sir. Baja.
To further Patterson's point, I enjoy this jokey Blofeld more than
he's fun.
Exposed and weak Blofeld. I ultimately the best Blofeld is the hidden, ultra powerful shadows controlling
in a serious
everything.
movie.
Blofeld.
That's the way to approach it.
Yes, that's the best one. But Blofeld cross-dressing, exposed with multiple duplicates and people everywhere,
and multiple cats too,
and impersonating Texas people.
Willard Whyte speaking. Yes, Governor, I got your message.
That is, I think, my second favorite Blofeld, and that's what I loved about this, is how much of a joke it was. Because where do you go? You don't go back to Shadows Blofeld. You can't put him back in the shadows after you brought him out for
Pandora
two
doesn't
movies.
go back into the box.
Yeah. You can't hide him again and make him some ultra secret character with tentacles and
he does
reaching out.
Scott, he does come back, but
well, he does. Yes,
he comes back in this franchise, I should say.
Yes,
but he's Moriarty
future
now.
Films,
He's Moriarty. He's the Joker. He's eternal. It's like, why doesn't Bond just kill him? Why doesn't he just kill Bond? That would be against the rules. They have too much fun fighting each other.
I do so enjoy our little visits, Mr. Bond.
Similar to Charlie, when I watched these movies basically when I was at Thanksgiving at my grandparents' house and Bondathon was on.
Bondathon.
All the time.
Spike TV.
That's it.
I somehow this must have escaped my radar. This is actually my first time seeing it.
Really?
Yes,
okay,
I've not seen this film before.
Go. What you got?
So I'm going to go ahead and say I almost want to apologize to McCurdy because I almost am tempted to rank this last. Because it's just
after last episode, I
got emotional, and you're like, I've seen all the Bond films. This is the worst Bond film.
I was hoping you were going to say rank this above Secret Service. Like, sorry, McCurdy, but fuck you.
I'll say this, Patterson. If we're talking about the ranking, though, I could see this going above. Well, hold on. Let's Charlie, ask the question.
Please,
So
yeah,
who
go
wants
ahead.
to make?
Ask the
I
question.
think honestly, I think we should go around the. I wish we could just reveal it all at the same time because
Okay.
I just want to say first off, I do fucking love this movie. Like I said, it makes up for being
Stupid.
terrible by being
Yeah.
hilarious and entertaining, and anything is inevitably going to head towards self-awareness and goofiness, right? Bond is constantly pretending to be somebody else in this movie. And it adds this odd comedic factor that enables Sean to just have fun this time around.
You are English?
Yes, I'm English.
I speak English. We were inseparable, you know.
Please, Mr. Franks.
Klaus Hergersheimer, G-section. Just checking on radiation shields.
Throughout the entire movie, he's a fraud and an imposter. At one point, he pretends to kill himself. And the chick, Tiffany Case, recognizes James Bond.
My God. You just killed James Bond.
Is that who it was?
I thought
Super
that was so
spy
weird.
that is
Like,
supposed to be
is he a
anonymous
public
and is just
figure?
supposed to be the blunt instrument of his government.
That's false.
Is apparently world famous, and so is Blofeld, to the point where it's now just straight up Batman versus the Joker. Blofeld is just like the Joker that's he's like an evil genius capable of doing anything. Apparently, as soon as he killed James Bond's wife, he went straight to work stockpiling diamonds to build a satellite to hold the world to ransom. In this movie, they reach superstar status, and that's stupid. And had this been You Only Live Twice, this movie would have been awful. But it's so fucking entertaining that very quickly I was like somewhat taking notes on shit that doesn't make sense. And then I was like, this is pointless. Why even point out a single thing that doesn't make sense? Because that's not the point of this movie. And it only lends towards this discussion we've had so far. And it's only going to continue in the future. Bond has this spectrum of like serious, dark, stark, and depressing. And then just like shut up and have fun. Like I suggest you just stop thinking about it. Have
It was
a good
almost
time.
kind of jarring to go from Secret Service to this.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Totally.
Because it just a like 180 tone shift. Complete 180 tone shift.
It's like give the people what they want. Apparently nobody wanted to walk out of the theater crying. They're like, what happened to Bond? Like normally I love and it's like fun, you know? And they all walked out of the theater depressed, and they're like, we need to get back to Bond using gadgets and shit. You know,
I agree with you. This movie's a lot of fun. I think this may have been one of the first movies I saw of the Bond series. I also was a little creeped out by it too.
It's honestly a decent one to start with because it's straight up super spy.
Yeah.
That if somebody had never watched James Bond and they wrote a Bond movie, it would be this movie. They would assume that this is what Bond was. And then they would go watch older stuff and they'd be like, wait, it was like classy and realistic and to be taken seriously. And Diamonds Are Forever is like watching Austin Powers. Yeah. Before we go any further, though, let's just get it out real quick. My rank is to put it at number 6. This movie's definitely better than You Only Live Twice because I think You Only Live Twice and Diamonds Are Forever are the same style of movie. It's just that they realized with Diamonds Are Forever that they could take a more comedic approach and kind of elevate it a bit. But there's no way that you could possibly put it in that top 5 because the quality of those movies as just spy action movies are just always going to be far superior. I do love this movie, but as a farce, I can't justify putting it above Thunderball, but I can absolutely justify putting it above You Only Live Twice. So far as I really wish that they would have gone comedic with You Only Live Twice. It's like they maybe did at parts, but it just made for a weaker movie that didn't really have interesting characters and all that. Whereas with this, I mean, at one point you have the Bond girl arguing with a 12-year-old over a stuffed animal, and she literally tells him to blow up his pants.
The machine's fixed. Who's she, your mother? Blow up your pants.
I just laugh the whole time at how ridiculous it is. It's just fun.
I'm just going to go ahead and give my ranking here. I actually agree with Charlie's ranking. I would still rank this personally above On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But here's why. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you why.
Does he have a poem?
Because On Her Majesty's Secret Service, in my opinion, tried to be something and failed to be what it set out to be.
I agree.
Whereas this movie definitely succeeded in what it was trying to do, which is why
we don't give a
it.
Our mission statement is not giving a and having fun.
Sustaining, however, the arguments from last time, which we're not going to rehash because that's not this episode, that was last episode. I'm going to go ahead and say I think it does belong above You Only Live Twice, because I think You Only Live Twice can also be blamed for that same problem where, like, I think they were trying to be serious in You Only Live Twice. They just failed. Whereas this movie...
I think, You Only Live Twice is very much a science fiction, over-the-top movie. I agree. I completely agree. I think I would put that the same spot. For sure.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it at 6.
And I also think this movie, from a cinematography standpoint, I think this is one of the uglier movies, mainly because the 2 colors that I'm wearing that I see a lot in this movie. It's not everywhere for sure, but you got that mustard yellow and brown combination that was prevalent in the early or late 60s,
very
early
70s look.
It's very much in the movie. And I always think of those 2 colors when I watch this movie, because as I'm watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's another mustard yellow, there's another brown. And even with Bambi and Thumper, like that's their outfits, is one's wearing brown, one's wearing yellow.
Nans, go ahead with your rank, then I'll finish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat as Patterson on this one, where I've never seen this one. And I wish what Charlie said was true for me in terms of you cry laughing watching this. I was just scratching my head the whole time.
That's kind of how I was.
Like, what is happening in this movie?
If you're going to be yelling out, what the it's also going to be Diamonds Are Forever. I think after watching, just being a Bond fan for so long, it is so self-referential, which I generally frown upon, but they take it to such a degree that eventually the movie just wins you over, and you're just like, I don't give a shit anymore.
McCurdy, you mentioned the questions, and that was me watching this movie. It's just question after question after question, and just
what is happening?
That was my experience.
Yeah, my gut reaction to the movie.
It was bewilderment more than it was bemusement.
Yeah, my impression was just a question, and that question for this movie, everything happening in it is just like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So you guys have seen it. Charlie, you've seen it. You understand what it is. So you can come in with an expectation and know to kind of cover your ears, cover your eyes a little bit, and just like throw the blinders on and try to enjoy it, I guess. Coming in blind, it's just like, what's going on? And I have a hard time separating it as like, okay, this is a comedy. This is a different type of James Bond. Look at it differently. Maybe these films aren't necessarily meant to watch back to back to back like we're doing. Like if back in the day you watched them as they came out every few years or whatever, it would be easier to separate it out like that. But coming in fresh off of all the other movies we've seen so far into this one is just confusing. And the only way I can rank it right now is just based off of entertainment value. If I had to choose a movie to watch again right now of the ones we've already seen, this would be at the bottom of my list. I think I would rank this last. But I could definitely see like Patterson's point about You Only Live Twice. It failed to achieve what it was trying to do.
You mean our Majesty's Secret Service?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean,
Patterson, I think you mentioned You Only Live Twice, right?
Yeah, I said I would put. I'm agreeing with Charlie's order of putting it above You Only Live Twice and below.
So it's a tone thing, though, right? It's a tone thing. So, like, You Only Live Twice says, take us seriously.
Right.
Secret Service says, really take us seriously. This is the equivalent of watching Batman Begins and then going and watching a Joel Schumacher, Batman and Robin.
Forever.
It's like if they had followed up Batman Begins with Batman Forever, and you're like, what the hell happened?
That's basically what it's like, yes.
Straight up.
Maybe if you guys had told me before you watch this, Nathan, keep in mind, it's a joke. The whole movie is a joke. Then I would have been more able to enjoy it.
Last week, he said something to that.
McCurdy said last week, Bond dies after this. Like, Secret
This
Service.
is the last
that's
true
like,
Bond film.
Yeah,
I think
like
he said
done.
something.
At that point, the franchise died with Tracy. And imagine being George Lazenby watching this movie and being like, Christ, I'm glad I got out when I did.
Dodge that bullet.
Like we said last week, though, Sean Connery has it. The guy has it in spades, and I've never watched a Sean Connery movie and I didn't enjoy it. He's one of those rare stars that no matter what they're doing,
and he's the star of that movie.
I even love that movie. I really do.
Sucks.
It's just
getting
that's
way
a
off topic
stupid.
with getting into those.
If you like that movie, you'll like this movie.
Yeah. So I want to switch gears.
I want to finish just with my ranking before we continue.
I'll let you finish
here.
that.
I want to build off of Nan's. It is tough going into this film after the last several, especially after the last one. Being a very serious film, very emotional. And then you walk into this film and you're like, what the is this? and it's funny. It is so funny. There's so many quips, so many good moments. It exactly as Patterson said, it hits its point to what it needs to be. And this is why I will go as far as ranking this one right now. My range is 5 to 6.
Okay.
As of current. But I would go as far as ranking this above Thunderball.
So I cannot, in good conscience, I can't put it above Thunderball, because Thunderball, no matter all the shit I talk about Thunderball, even just the underwater fight at the end alone is enough to rank it above. Thunderball wasn't enough to put it above the first 3 Connery films. When it comes to Connery Bond, those first 4 are so rock solid that I just can't in good conscience put Diamonds Are Forever above any of those. But I can absolutely put it above You Only Live Twice. Again, not to keep reiterating,
I could
but,
see that.
but
Correct.
You Only Live Twice. I really wish they would have brought in Guy Hamilton to do what he did for Diamonds Are Forever, to do that to You Only Live Twice.
I have strong childhood memories of Mr. Wint and Mr. Kid.
Yeah.
As soon as they came back on, I'm like, these two motherfuckers, god damn it.
Let's talk. Let's talk about those two guys. So Mr.
McCurdy,
Kid,
please tell us how they're the basis for Dumb and Dumber.
Oh my God!
I
Right?
love it.
So Mr. Wint and
They
Mr.
straight
Kid,
up are.
They have to be.
Go talk
Okay,
to
so
whoever
Mr.
wrote Dumb and Dumber, or it was the whatever brothers. They guaranteed it was these guys that inspired
So
those
Mr.
characters.
Kid is played by musician Putter Smith, which I don't think any of you guys are going to know who that is. But Mr. Wint is played by Crispin Glover's father. You know, Crispin Glover from Back to the Future. He played
Professional
Marty's dad.
weirdo. Yeah.
Yes, professional weirdo. So the apple did not fall far from the tree, so to speak, after watching this movie. But Bruce Glover plays Mr. Wint. Now, when I was watching the behind-the-scenes stuff for this movie, Bruce Glover makes it pretty clear that he's like, there's no mixing words here. These two are definitely gay. So when they created the character, Glover's just like, yeah, I mean, I looked at Putter and I was like, he's basically my toy. Like, this is... Like, he's my bitch, kind of. Like, he didn't say
And
that.
they don't hide that at all.
But
No.
I love all, but he said there's all that jealousy and all
It's very
that stuff that's
emphasized.
in there.
Yeah.
I love that line where he's like, he gets down and she's like, she's very attractive.
They're both aboard. I must say, Miss K seems quite attractive. For a lady.
For a lady.
He looks at her, and he's like,
and
what the fuck,
at
dude?
the end, when Kid, right? Kid's bald
Kid
guy.
is the bald one.
Kid's the bald one. When he is on fire and jumps in the water, for half a second, I actually feel really bad for Wint. You know, because he's like, he looks at him like, oh, and he just goes right back to choking Bond. You know, and you feel a little sorry for him in that moment. You know, like had they not tried to kill Bond, they would have had a nice life together, going off and just being weird sociopaths. They are.
He deserved it. He thought attacking them with flaming
But we
skewers
talked
was a
about
good
it.
idea.
There's a joke in there. We just
Flaming
have to
shish
find
kebabs,
it.
yeah.
Like we're like just now. Flaming
But then,
kebabs.
what a brilliant...
We were ranking this based on what movie would make the best drinking game. Top of the list. Period. No question.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Every time our Dumb and Dumber decide to do something that's vaguely homoerotic, that's a drink.
Oh my God, they're my favorite characters in this whole movie.
Absolutely.
I liked them just because they were so weird.
Charlie, you talked about when we did Goldfinger, you even mentioned it's like one of my favorite things is every time you see Odd Job, he has a little jingle, a little thing. This movie does the same thing. It's Guy Hamilton. So this movie, you get every time you see Mr. Kid and Mr. Wint, they have their own dark, weird theme song.
Yeah.
What a brilliant death, where he pulls his legs between... This is Mr. Wint. and then he's like, he certainly had his tails between his legs.
Yeah, which is...
And he blows up.
On that note, I think
What a
that's the
death.
only Bond joke in this movie.
Well, he's certainly left with his tails between his legs.
Unfortunately.
Which is-
Here's the
You'd
irony.
think it'd be riddled with Bond
Exactly.
jokes.
Exactly.
more than that.
The irony is that this movie that is a comedy. This is the first comedy we've come across.
Yeah. No, it is.
Yeah.
Straight up.
I would not even call it an action film first. It is a comedy movie.
Straight up. I laugh. Like, okay, I said last week, if you were going to cry watching one Bond movie, it's probably going to be Secret Service. If you're going to cry laughing watching a Bond movie, it's going to be Diamonds Are Forever. And it's...
Agreed.
They just are shameless about it, and they just don't give a fuck. They just wanted to go back to, let's just entertain people. And Sean Connery's getting old, so let's not do any, he's not like young and sleek. He's old and sleek. And what do you do to compensate for the action that Bond was capable of in the past? You just straight up have him just be like an older, goofy guy who wouldn't believably beat anybody up, but they just have him cracking jokes the whole time. The Bond jokes, though, there's like Welcome to Hell, Blofeld, which isn't really a Bond joke as much as...
rhyme.
Welcome to hell, Blofeld.
Last week, I failed to mention that George Lazenby somehow pulls off what I deem the best Bond joke.
He had lots of guts.
The double meaning with he had lots of guts, that immediately elevated it right to the top of my list. And the way he says it too, just, he had lots of guts. And she's like, oh, really? Like, it's so, that moment is so perfect that I got to give it up to Lazenby for taking the top spot of my list is now George Lazenby. Now, he's not on the top of many lists, but he's the top of mine when it comes to Bond jokes right now.
Now, Charlie, I have to challenge you on one Bond joke. You're saying this one only had maybe a couple? You missed one, I think. When he's comparing her as a blonde versus a brunette, where he says...
I tend to notice little things like that, whether a girl is a blonde or a brunette.
And which do you prefer?
Oh, providing the collars and cuffs match.
He says funny stuff constantly. What I'm saying is that for me, my list is, my definition of a Bond joke is, remember the rules. A murder has just taken place, and then it's punny or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you only have Blofeld, Welcome to Hell, or Welcome to Hell, Blofeld, and he left with his tail between his legs. The actual my definition of Bond jokes are really weak in this movie, but Bond otherwise is hilarious throughout. He has a funny line for absolutely everything going on.
I'm afraid you've caught me with more than my hands up.
Hey, what the hell is this?
Thank you very much. I was just out walking my rat and I seem to have lost my way.
And every time that he shows up in a new location, he just has some line ready to go. Again, it's like they compensated for his like not doing a bunch of crazy action, for him just being a super spy that apparently the world knows of now, that just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm the Acme inspector or whatever. He didn't try to sneak his way onto that oil rig. He just showed up like, I'm James fucking Bond, bitch. Everybody knows my name, and
he had
I'm a
Playboy
super spy.
card with James Bond on it.
Yeah. It's so self-aware.
Are there TV interviews with him or something?
So, and Mr. Wint and Mr. Kid had so many good one-liners in this. Like, they're back and forth.
They basically took all the Bond jokes and gave them to Wint and Kid.
Very moving. Heartwarming, Mr. Wint.
A glowing tribute, Mr. Kid.
Yeah,
Wint and Kid are essentially the evil version of Bond. Whenever Bond kills somebody and he's got some quippy line, they gave all of that to Wint and Kid.
He got bitten by the bug.
Yeah, bitten by the bug.
Who are you?
Dr. Tynan sent us.
Why didn't he come himself?
He was taken sick. Bitten by the bug.
Okay, so on your point about Connery, I actually like Connery a lot in this movie, for one.
Totally.
I actually think he's a lot more, like you said, this movie's a lot more fun, right?
He phoned it in for You Only Live Twice, but he tried in this one.
You said, hey, he's old now, but I want to put something into context for you all, because I was doing the math. Connery is only 40 in this movie. Now, I say only 40 because our next Bond, Roger Moore, will be 42 in his first, or no, he's 42 currently while this movie, I think, is being made.
Wow.
Roger Moore looks amazing. He does not look
subtract old and add in fat.
He doesn't get Connery is fucking fat in this movie. Okay, let me add other ones. Daniel Craig currently, his last Bond film, 53.
That's what I
Pierce
thought.
Brosnan, when he did Goldeneye, he was 42. And Dalton was 41 when he did Living Daylights.
Wait. 42 when he did Goldeneye.
Yeah. So for Connery to come out and be like, I'm old. Like, no, Connery, you're not old. You just stopped giving a shit. Stop going to the gym, started drinking and eating whatever the you wanted because you're making $1 million on a fucking movie.
I just want to have sex and eat ice cream.
And honestly, if you're Sean Connery, why not live that way?
He's still, but I think Connery's
I would do the same.
Something that I didn't mention last time was that, and I'd seen this on a different podcast or a different show, but they mentioned about how Lazenby's performance, because Lazenby wasn't an actor, when Lazenby is pretending to be Sir Hilary, he really is just trying to play Sir Hilary. He's not really trying to play a character playing another character. But in this movie, you can really see Connery's talent in playing a character, playing another character.
Yes,
Peter Franks.
3rd floor.
Guten Abend.
Good evening.
Vita?
Every single scene he's in, he's pretending to be somebody else.
But when he's in Holland, when they're in Amsterdam and he sees Peter Grave, he's acting like he's from Holland. But he does I think he does a fantastic job there.
He's so much fun. That's what I mean. It's just so much fun. Try to follow the plot. I mean, any one of you, try to tell me the plot right now.
The plot of the movie, to me at least, was that
there was
some kind of, they were trying to figure out why diamonds were getting smuggled out. And for some reason, Bond, that was the mission that Bond was given, was figure out what's going on with these diamonds. Much like in Goldfinger, where it was Goldfinger's smuggling gold out, we got to figure out how he's doing it. And it just so happens in Goldfinger that he comes across this devious plot. But in this movie, it's kind of the same plot in that regard, where he's trying to figure out where these diamonds are going. So he's following the chain. Meanwhile, Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint are closing the chain, killing off all of the loose ends in that chain. Which, by the way, we never know if they're Spectre agents or not, because this film never mentions Spectre once. It only talks about Ernst Blofeld, and that's it. While Bond is
on that note, though,
that chain,
what we talked about was, why don't they just separate Blofeld from Spectre entirely? It's like they were listening in on our conversation last week, and it's like, okay, now Blofeld is as much of a super villain as Bond is a super spy superhero.
Yeah.
Right? They are Batman and Joker. They are each capable of doing anything, to the point where now Blofeld has body doubles and everything. It's almost like in the way that they thought about maybe giving Bond or Blofeld plastic surgery in Secret Service to justify why they don't recognize each other. They straight up just say, whatever, fuck it, whatever. Blofeld has body doubles that he hires other guys to double him, so that Blofeld can literally be eternal now. He can never go away. He just keeps coming back, you know?
Yeah.
He's like Michael Myers now.
But yeah, essentially the movie is him finding this diamond chain of where the diamonds are going. He ends up finding out that the diamonds are being used for this special laser satellite, which I think there was a line in there about diamonds were used for the first laser. And we talked about in Goldfinger, lasers were only been around for 3 years at that point. So the idea that there's a space laser that is just gonna basically be the ransom... It's the same as a nuclear weapon. Now it's like a laser that's in space, which we'll return to in other films.
Yeah,
of course.
But, okay, so that's all well and good, right? That's the general plot.
Yeah,
Bond is trying to find the source, where are all these diamonds going? Wint and Kidd are trying to close that up, cover the tracks of whoever is stockpiling them. But within that domain, you have all this crazy shit happening that doesn't make any sense, and you're just along for this ride. Almost like this movie's closer to Snatch than it is to,
Bond. Yeah,
any other Bond movie. Right?
You mentioned the Tiffany Case line, where it's like, you just killed James Bond. Because I was going to talk about how this film kind of has headcanon, right? Is the canon that now
self-awareness,
James Bond's this?
Self-awareness.
Yeah, it's just,
headcanon is for fans.
For
Self-awareness is for
but then
franchises that have gone
about
on
it,
for
is
too
it
far,
is the
too
question
long.
is Bond, like you had said, is Bond a celebrity? Do people know who? Why? I mean, the only time that the public has ever mentioned who James Bond is in You Only Live Twice, when he gets killed. We as Americans don't even know who killed Osama bin Laden.
Yeah.
Right? We have no idea
Nobody
who that
should know
is.
who Bond is, but apparently now everybody knows who he is, because this movie is, again, franchises go on too long, and then they become self-aware. And that either hurts it, like Daniel Craig is starting to become too self-aware.
Yeah.
And that's hurting the franchise.
Yeah.
Again, McCurdy laid out the overall plot, but the twists and turns don't make any sense. And eventually you're just along for the ride where it's like you have this weird cast of characters that's just like this rotating carousel. Like when he goes back to the hotel room with Plenty O'Toole and all the gangsters are there, the gangsters were there just to throw Plenty out the window and then they leave. It just at a certain point you just go, F it, I'm just along for the ride on this Austin Powers carousel, and it's not worth your time trying to figure this movie out. This movie is just fun. McCurdy, let's talk a bit. We didn't really flesh out last week. We didn't really flesh out story versus plot, and I think these two movies definitely showcase the difference, right?
Okay.
Whereas you went on about how, guys, look, Secret Service has so much in the story department. And what story is, what we talked about is like you have plot, which is the things that happen, versus story, which incorporates characters, and then how characters react to things that happen and they change. That's generally what a story is showcasing how a character or characters change and bond.
Or don't change.
Or don't change. And that's the thing. What happens with Secret Service is that Bond comes into the story, he changes, but then right at the end, he changes back. I mean, hang on. Bond changes so far as he gets married and he's ready to leave this life behind, but then that life is taken from him so that by the time you get to the beginning of this movie, it's straight up the moment in Austin Powers where he's like, oh no, my wife died. I guess that means I'm single again. Yeah! Like where it's just Bond is right back to where he was.
Yeah.
Bond changed to change right back.
But we have, at least that movie has a story arc in the sense that like we can't keep going on doing these films where he's a superhero essentially. He does the same things. He fight and I kept saying the same things. But he has emotional
to make a superhero Bond again.
No,
exactly.
I'm not, when I say superhero, when I'm saying superhero, I'm not talking about like superheroes and like Superman. I'm talking about him.
You talk about like the vulnerability of the character or lack thereof.
Bond is a superhero.
He's invincible. He's emotionally, nothing hurts him emotionally, nothing hurts him. Things can hurt him physically, but he brushes it off. Honor Majesty's Secret Service demonstrates that was not what that Bond was, as far as things do hit him emotionally, especially mainly towards the end of the film. And there is a kind of an emotional journey with that character. So when I said that film had story, it has a lot of story, whether the plot of the movie makes sense or not, which is what you guys were arguing last time.
And you're right that typically a story like that is going to have themes. And the theme of that story was Bond's career versus his life, and Bond being a tool of Her Majesty versus being his own man. And our overall point with that was that those were the themes, and were they completely realized? Go watch that episode. They may or may not have been completely realized.
And
Whereas
I think
this
it's also
movie,
personal taste.
they threw all of that out, and they just made a big summer blockbuster that everybody could eat popcorn and laugh and not cry and just have fun.
And this movie, Charlie, you were talking about the plot of this movie is a little weird and wonky, but just because a movie's plot heavy does not make it a bad movie.
I would have thought that this movie was written by Roald Dahl. Like if you told me that Roald Dahl wrote this movie, I'd be like, totally. Yeah. And that's what I mean is there's such a connection between this film and You Only Live Twice, but You Only Live Twice asks you to take it seriously. This movie says right off the bat, it's like, don't take this seriously and you'll have a good time.
I do feel like they tried to build off of the last film in the beginning with opening up with Sean Connery just killing everything. Killing
they just
everybody.
Have to tie up the loose ends that the last movie made.
Yeah.
I think they could have gone farther with it, and they just decided, again, people didn't watch movies like they watch television shows like they do today. Like, we don't have a streaming service. Like, back then, if you wanted to see the old movie, you had to wait to see if it was re-released, because there was no VHS tapes. Betamax and VHS were just coming out and just coming onto the market, but not everybody owned those things, and usually it was to record old television shows. So the only time you could see a movie...
I don't even think the Betamax is out yet.
It's the only way to watch a movie was if it was on TV or if the theater did a re-release of it. So a lot of these weird shortcomings that we're noticing now kind of get glossed over when these movies came out, because people just were like, oh yeah, I remember I vaguely remember this thing happening in the last movie. But the intention, like I think I said last time, was that they were going to have this movie be a direct sequel to On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The end of the movie where Tracy gets killed was going to be the beginning of this movie. And then it would have been a revenge story where Bond would be going after Blofeld and Drago was going to come back and Irma Blunt was going to come back. And obviously they threw all that out and decided, F it. Look, we're going to Vegas, baby.
You really had to change Bond. You could not have had George Lazenby jump into this. As much as we said, wouldn't it have been cool to see Sean Connery in Secret Service? With this, it's like, wouldn't you love to have seen George Lazenby try to play this role like in another universe? Like, you know, Rick and Morty style, pull this movie from another universe and watch it with Lazenby and just be like, this is basically our man Flint. You know, it'd basically be a Flint movie with George Lazenby. I mean, like tall, lanky British guy banging a bunch of chicks with a plot that doesn't make any sense and with a super bad guy.
Hey, in like Flint, that's my favorite movie.
And we got a lot of cars in this movie. There's more cars in this movie.
We haven't talked a lot of cars
than any of the other films. So, Nans, what was your impression of the Vegas chase scene?
Best part of the movie.
Well, I was actually thinking of mentioning, so when Charlie brought up that like lunar rover chase scene, that starts like a, 15, 20 minute episode of Dukes of Hazzard in the middle of James Bond. I looked it up. I was like, was this inspired by Dukes of Hazzard? Because I'm not too familiar with that show. And apparently it was like mid to later 70s. So this was before that. I mean, the chase scene was fun, but at the same time, it's like everyone chasing them is a moron. So it's like, are they in danger? Apparently not, because the cops are idiots and everyone else is an idiot, just crashing into each other and driving off of cliffs and stuff. So, I mean, I enjoyed the chase scene, but I wouldn't place it all that high against the other chase scenes in the other movies.
That's fair. That's fair. But so interesting about that chase scene, though. The famous car flip, the car when he gets the car on the side. Goofy moment, right?
Oh, and then
if you guys notice, goes through the car one way, comes out the alley the other way.
Yeah.
And the only reason that was because they originally filmed it correctly and they f***ed it up the second time or when it comes out because they filmed the first part in a studio.
At least they inserted a shot where they switch.
That was the fix.
Physics, how the physics works on that.
Doesn't.
Again,
this whole movie is
this movie. Whatever.
How does Bond get out of the situation? He flips a car on two wheels because he's a super spy that can do anything. He's literally the James Bond that everybody in the world knows now. He's capable of anything. There's nothing outside of the bounds of imagination and all that shit. This movie asks you to not critique it. That's why it works.
The primary emotion that I felt watching it really was confusion. And not just at the plot, which is without a doubt super confusing, but it's also made me like, I think I've said in previous episodes that like the Bonds that I like the most, the ones that have like the good action and they don't really try to get like too super deep and all that stuff. And now I'm like, maybe I don't like that. Because honestly, I don't know if I like having Bond be funny. This movie kind of makes me question whether or not I like the campy Bond feel. It's like I'm a 15-year-old bisexual young man who doesn't know he's bisexual and he's been into girls and then one day he sees 300 and now he's thinking about a lot of things that he wasn't thinking about before. So like that's kind of how this movie's made me feel.
The best analogy I've heard.
Are you sure it wasn't Kid and Wint?
Maybe it was Kid.
No, those two sexy motherfuckers.
I want to ask you though to just clarify a bit. Are you saying that you once liked Funny Bond, but this movie made you question it? Or
first, I'm gonna reference, but
who's paying in advance?
I think Daniel Craig movies have got me fucked up because like for a while that was like my perception. I watched these movies, the older movies when I was a kid, like a young kid, and at the time not watching it with any sense of like film critique. I'm just like, this is shit to watch on TV and there's explosions and babes. So like, of course I'm going to watch this when I'm 13 years old, not paying attention.
Yeah.
And then now, like the Bond movies that I'm used to are the Craig movies where it's taken really seriously, but some of those weren't good. So until we started doing this podcast, I would have said, yeah, I prefer the older ones because I remembered having more fun watching those. And this movie, which I hadn't seen before until now, I was like, maybe I don't like the older one. Like, maybe I am just like a serious Bond guy because I feel like I enjoy those films more.
Every neighborhood that Bond lives in, I can visit there. I prefer to live in the area populated by serious Bond, where it is closer to the books, it's closer to the character, right, that Ian Fleming originally created. It's the same thing as Chris Tolkien, J.R. Tolkien's son, who's like, well, I hate the Lord of the Rings movies. I hate the Hobbit movies. And you're like, why? He's like, you took my father's legacy and you turned it into an action schlock movie. You turned it into this goofy shit. You ruined what he created. And you go, but it's a movie. And that's kind of what this movie represents. Ian Fleming is probably spinning around in his grave. Like, none of my spy career was like this. And Cubby Broccoli just goes, it's a movie. We're here to please an audience and have fun. And last time, we really tried to do something profound, and we kind of fell on our face. But that movie, Secret Service, is the prototype for when Craig comes in, where you are to take this stuff seriously. But then eventually, Craig movies will get goofy, and he's probably done now. But then the next iteration of Bond might get goofy, right? This stuff ebbs and flows as it has to over a long series of time. What these Bond movies are shaping up to, as we've been building on over time, is very serious or goofy or kind of a mixture of the two. And this is going to be our conversation for the next several months doing the rest of these films. And with this one, it's so much fun. My cup of tea is generally going to be the more serious ones, but then visiting Crazy Town is fun so long as the movies like this, where it's fuck it. I mean, this might as well be the Casino Royale parody movie. Yeah. And at this point, to McCurdy's point last week, that's where the spy genre was kind of headed. And that all eventually leads to Austin Powers that owns that genre, right? So far as the jokes are concerned, until Batman Begins comes along and like revolutionizes everybody's thoughts on everything. But I think with Thunderball, the argument there was they really tried. Nothing says it better than reach exceeding grasp. They really tried, and that movie is to be taken seriously. There's nothing about that movie to not take seriously. But with Diamonds Are Forever, it's such a farce that you never once question whether Bond is going to get killed or not. I mean, even when Bond is literally in an oven, suddenly he's just saved. Like Deus Ex Machina style, just like, he's saved.
You dirty double-crossing limey fink, those goddamn diamonds are phonies.
Where are the fucking diamonds?
And, they're like, where you fucking limey where are the goddamn diamonds? And then I just laugh because it's like, here we are again. Like, it's like the movie Snatch. Everybody's going after this product, and everybody who touches the product dies. I mean, it's like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. It's like it's like all these action comedies.
It's a Guy Ritchie movie.
Like, it's a Guy Ritchie movie. Before he was born.
Curious how everyone who touches those diamonds seems to die.
As a Bond purist, I'll probably always rank the more serious movies higher on principle alone, but intention does matter, right? And again, You Only Live Twice set out for you to take it really seriously, and it accidentally was goofy. It didn't mean to be goofy. It accidentally was goofy. This movie means to be goofy, and I think it achieves what it was trying to do.
Definitely achieves
so much harder than I think On Her Majesty's Secret Service is to be respected, though it failed to really achieve what it was trying to do. Because you can read between the lines and see what Peter Hunt was trying to do, and he didn't exactly get there. He got there enough to earn our 4th spot. Otherwise, he could have gotten number 1. On Her Majesty's Secret Service could have gotten number 1. It didn't quite Batman Begins this shit, though, right? It's right at that sweet spot of number 4. And then right below that, I think Thunderball lives where it tried to achieve something big, and it just sunk below the surface. You Only Live Twice just ended with a cartoon. And I think that's just at the bottom with Diamonds Are Forever, just above it, where Diamonds Are Forever doesn't give a fuck. It doesn't even want to be on this list. It's just like, fuck you. I don't care about your stupid-ass list. I'm a fun-ass movie, okay?
This is my very quick interjection. If you had taken Blofeld in Diamonds Are Forever and made him the bad guy in Thunderball, Thunderball would be a much higher ranked movie.
Yeah.
That is my argument here is, I'm sorry, I love how jokingly stupid this film is.
Right idea, Mr. Bond.
But wrong pussy.
It is so one of a kind within the Connery world.
So, Scott, I want to hear what you have to say about the theme song for this particular movie.
Diamonds are forever. Diamonds are forever.
Forever. Forever.
I'm sorry, gents. This is number one. Period.
Really? You put this at number one?
Yep.
Okay, let me back you up real quick.
I'm gonna drink ahead of time. Hold on.
We've been doing
Has
that
there
this
been
episode.
a more iconic Bond theme song for all of time? No,
Yes.
there hasn't. There has not. From
Yes, there
Kanye
has.
to repeating
No.
this song has lasted decades.
What
This
you
song
haven't
has
said,
lasted
Scott,
decades.
what you have not said so far is why how you define a Bond song. So I'm going to define it for you in your absence.
Okay.
For me, I rank very highly this song and specifically Goldfinger. And you put, I know you put Thunderball above Goldfinger, but I think, and it happens to be Shirley Bassey or whatever that did these two. But I think what defines a Bond song for me is that it has a certain level of sexiness. And that's why when Patterson brought up You Only Live Twice, while that song is beautiful, it is a beautiful song, it's not sexy. Whereas Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger, when those big ass horns hit, you know you're watching a Bond movie. It just, there's like this sexy, there's like sexy sax man comes in and you got this sexiness that comes along with a Bond movie. The big horns you talked about.
So if that's your definition, I'll accept that Diamonds Are Forever is a better Bond song, but I would just say You Only Live Twice is just a better song.
I think
100%.
Diamonds Are Forever is obnoxious.
Here's where I go back to my original argument. Sorry, McCurdy, give me 1 second. I told you my my favorite Bond song out of all the ones we've had so far is From Russia with Love.
Okay, I disagree with you. Scott, I'm on with you with the level of like the orchestra, like the sound of Diamonds Are Forever as far as it feels like a Bond song. More unlike cuz I like Patterson, I like You Only Live Twice. I like the song. I like the melody of that
it's
song.
a good song.
Yes.
It's a great song. But as just a Bond song,
a Bond intro.
Diamonds Are Forever is more of a Bond song. However,
yes.
That being said, I don't like Diamonds Are Forever because it's a very obnoxious song.
It is.
And they
And why
repeat
is
the
that?
lyrics and I have to hear forever.
Why?
Forever. Like you could do like a 10-hour YouTube cut and have Shirley Bassey going Diamonds Are Forever, forever, and like just keep
You
going
could do
forever.
that with any Bond
And
song.
it would not any Bond song, just
Yes,
this Bond
that's
song.
not true. Yes, you could.
Just this Bond song.
Goldfinger.
Goldfinger.
That's
Here's
a
the thing.
dumb
I'm just saying
argument.
I like Goldfinger more than I like Diamonds Are Forever.
Fine.
I like Goldfinger more than I like Diamonds
I
Are
still
Forever
have
also.
Goldfinger at number 3.
This
I
isn't
agree
a
with
bad, and I
McCurdy.
don't absolutely hate this song. Like I'm not like this is bottom of the list, go to kind of song. It's just it's not my favorite. It's not one of my favorites.
No, I agree with McCurdy. I think Goldfinger's a better.
Let me finish. If I go to anybody on the street and I say, recite one Bond song for me outside of the recent Bond songs, because everybody's going to fucking sing Skyfall.
Say Skyfall. Yeah.
Skyfall's the
They're going to go to Diamonds Are Forever.
Because
they
of
are.
Kanye.
I think people are going to go to Goldfinger.
Because of
I
Kanye,
disagree.
yes, but it lasted the ages.
Wait, Patterson,
and
do
it's
you
still
disagree with
such
Scott or
a
you disagree with me?
brilliant
Just to
song.
clarify.
It's still
No, I
it
agree
is.
with you, McCurdy. I agree
A lot
100%
of crap
with you.
gets remembered forever too, though.
Yes.
Like
I
my
just
dad
think,
remembers the Goobers and Raisinets commercial. It's just,
See,
like,
I just
just
think
because it's
Go ahead, McCurdy.
memorable.
Yeah, I
doesn't
just
make
think
it good.
Goldfinger is just way more
Yeah,
iconic.
I
Drink.
Don't say it or else you have to drink.
See,
I'll drink
I
with you,
drank
McCurdy, because
before I
I
said
would say the
iconic.
same thing. I'll drink, but I will back this up with facts, or at least like reasonings.
Try.
Go. What are you drinking, by the way?
Straight
Cranberry
moonshine,
vodka.
looks like.
Moonshine?
Cranberry
Cranberry vodka?
Okay.
Oh,
So,
you guys are twins.
What I
McCurdy
actually
and
did,
Patterson.
you know those little like flavor squirt things?
Are you
Uh-huh.
Patterson? Do you go by Mr. Wint or
Yeah,
Mr. Kid?
Mr. Wint, Mr. Kid. Do we have two here, or what? You want to hold hands?
Who's Mr.
Keep
Wint?
that
and
up,
Who's Mr. Kid?
Keep
Which,
that
by
up,
the way,
Scott, not-
you guys know
Goldfinger in your ass.
Mr. Kid was definitely the
His
bottom,
bitch.
right?
Yeah, he was
He's
the bottom
definitely the bitch.
He was the
Yeah.
power bottom.
Well, I
Yeah.
have to say to you guys, you keep that bullshit up, and I'm going to write a poem about you.
Write it. Write it. No, please.
So-
Please do. After the last one, I would love to. I would feel honored to have a poem written about me.
I will.
Please.
Patterson, I'll hold your hand, buddy.
Please.
Appreciate that.
Goldfinger in your ass, you two. So,
Patterson, I'll be your Mr. Kid
okay,
to your Mr. Wint.
McCurdy and Patterson, tell me your order so far.
My order?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I would put Goldfinger as number one based on the definition. Because, okay, I did say You Only Live Twice because I think it's the best song so far. But if we're going to talk
It is a
about
great song.
Bond song,
Yeah.
then definitely Goldfinger because I think it is.
It's so
the most-
sexy.
It's definitely a sexy song. It's
It just
also,
hits with those horns right away. That's how you know it's
It's
a
also
Bond
the most
song.
on theme. It's also the most on theme to what the movie is about. The man with the Midas touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it
touch
is
of
very
gold.
on theme to what the movie is about.
A spider's touch.
Oh,
So yeah,
you guys, I just got a little.
Like,
Yeah.
which song would you want to to? It's probably gonna be Goldfinger.
Here's any song women would want to Diamonds Are Forever, while you
Exactly.
put a diamond on her finger. So the two don't understand that. That's fine.
No.
Yeah, Mr. Kid, Mr. Wint over here.
I'd put
That's fine.
Goldfinger.
If you-
I'd probably say Goldfinger, then Thunderball, then probably You Only Live Twice, then From Russia with Love, then Diamonds Are Forever, and then Three Blind Mice. Something like that. I might change that order a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask your daughter what the best song is. It's Three Blind Mice.
Three by mice.
I like it.
Okay. I'm willing to concede because Diamonds Are Forever and Goldfinger are equally big Bond songs for me in the beginning. And these two stay top of the order through the rest of the Bond
so
franchise
I'll
for
say
me.
Diamonds Are
Then you
Forever
need
is
to
number
get-
2 based on the Bond song
How?
criteria.
You
I
don't
just
keep
think I
Diamonds
like
Are Forever
Goldfinger
in the
better.
top 10 through all 24, McCurdy?
Nope. Absolutely
You're
not.
out of your goddamn mind.
I am
Shut
not
up.
out of my goddamn mind. I am
Stay
with,
in your
I am with
turtleneck.
the
Stay at the bottom.
mainstream.
Shut up.
Real Bond fans would be like, get the out.
No,
There's the door.
no. What Bond fans are gonna say?
Every Bond fan
Diamonds
is gonna
Are
be like, no,
Forever.
dude,
Any Shirley Bassey song
because
is
we're
top
gonna get to the
10.
next Bond the next Bond
Bonds
film. I
Franz.
think is the next Bond
The
film. I
Bonds
think
Franz.
has
Drink
probably
right
the
now.
best.
The
Drink,
Bonds
bitch.
Franz.
Don't you dare reference Paul
I
McCartney.
never said the name.
You're
I never said the
referencing
name.
Paul McCartney. I'll drink
I
with
never
you.
said
and
it.
that one's
I
in the
never said
top,
his name.
McCurdy, but
Never said his
that
name.
hasn't happened yet. To quickly bring this back to rank, Charlie, earlier I said I would be willing to rank this above Thunderball, and you said under your belief you could not let that happen. I just want to very quickly
Make a case
hear
for it,
why
please,
that's
though.
not. We have cross-dressing Blofeld, as I brought up. We have Mr. Wit and Mr. Kid. Arguably the funniest combo of villains we've had. Actually, the only comedy
They're actually
villains
probably,
we've
you know,
had.
we were doing a list of assassins, right? Like they are the most effective assassins to date.
Yeah,
totally.
And
Yeah.
they're the most fleshed out characters. They have this weird relationship. They're fun to watch, and yet, like, oh, and by the way, when they said he was bitten by the bug originally, there's a deleted scene where instead of putting the scorpion in his back, he opens up. He's like, like, okay, look in his mouth. And he goes like, ah. So the dentist is looking in his mouth and he's going, ah. And then Mr. Wint grabs the scorpion and shoves it in his mouth. And that's how he dies. There's another deleted scene with Shady Tree. And you actually see how they kill him. They actually, in Charlie, you kept bringing up the Joker. They shoot a gun with like a joke bang thing, like the Joker would. And then they shoot Shady Tree in the back of the head with the same gun. In the deleted scene, so we actually see how he got killed. But there's actually a couple of deleted scenes in this film. Sammy Davis Jr. actually appeared in this movie.
Wow. They ain't never gonna get a cake big enough to put him on top of.
Was he just a big Bond fan and was just like, I want to be in these movies?
They put him in the movie, and then he had a deleted scene, and then they cut it. But
that's kind of how this stuff always goes. It's like something becomes big, right?
Ed Sheeran
and then suddenly everybody
Yes.
wants to be. Yeah, Ed Sheeran's a perfect example. Suddenly everybody wants a cameo. Once something becomes big, you open the door to everybody wants a piece of it, and then eventually you have Sammy Davis Jr. in your movie that like I actually did watch that deleted scene, and I see why they deleted it because it's awful. It's just like pointless.
It doesn't really add anything to
It doesn't
the movie.
add anything other than just like Sammy Davis Jr. is in this movie. I can see why you got rid of this because all it is like, well, my cousin's uncle's niece wanted to be in this because they knew it was going to be a big deal. Back when we were making the fucking thing, nobody gave a shit. Like when we were making Dr. No, nobody knew who we are. We were flying below the radar. But now everybody wants a piece of us, and that slowly brings your shit down, and the self-awareness rises, right? And that's the fate of any franchise. Go watch Star Wars, and to Patterson's point last week, it's like Star Wars is chock full of mistakes. You may love when that music kicks in and it brings you right back to your childhood, but this movie takes it to such a degree. This movie's like watching what Solo probably was meant to be. Like the original Solo movie directed by those guys that are comedians was probably going to be, don't take this seriously and just have fun. And then the powers that be at Disney were like, no, you need to take this all like super seriously. And then they brought in Ron Howard to like make it dark, really dark and like serious. This movie is like, we just don't give a other than we just want to please an audience. And I think it absolutely achieves what it sets out to do. But that doesn't mean that it's better than Goldfinger or From Russia with Love or Dr. No or even Thunderball or even Secret Service. I think it sits perfectly at that sixth spot, just above You Only Live Twice.
And I think you can make the argument, like, as we go on, and I don't think this counts as me referencing other films, but, like, I bet we'll probably rank this above other movies on that basis.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this in the last episode, but, like, I rank things based on whether or not they could have avoided mistakes. And in this case, it was campy enough that you can't really call them mistakes.
Yeah.
They were just f***ing around. And when that's the context, like, it's okay to have dumb shit in it.
And I love that. I love that. Just to build off of your point, Patterson, to go back to mine, that's what makes me love this film so much, that they just did not give a shit. Again, like I said, the last film, it was good to have an emotional bond and have that break from, doesn't give a about woman, doesn't want to marry, etc., to just fun Bond, fun Blofeld, etc. It's a good break. Again, it's a breath of fresh air.
I think to your point, this movie makes a point about like today we have the the superhero franchise genre, right? Like, and I always bring this up because it's a really good parallel because of
totally,
that is what's in right now. Whether it's you're specifically talking about the Marvel movies or just all of them in general, but those movies keep going on, and people, at some point, a franchise or an idea or whatever is in vogue begins to lose its luster, and it either has to do two things. It either has to transcend what it's doing, which you get with films like The Dark Knight, where, yes, that's even before the Marvel films, but still that movie was trying to do something a little more adult with the franchise. And you see that with like films like Logan or some elements in some of the Avengers movies. Or you go the other way, which this movie does, like Deadpool, where it's a comedy where you're where everything is almost a farce. You're making jokes about things. You're making parodies. And that's kind of interesting in this element because On Her Majesty's Secret Service definitely, and I still think, even though you guys disagree that, it fails in some ways. I still think that movie, well, we don't have to go back. But what I'm saying is that is what it's doing. It's trying to transcend just same old thing. Bond comes in, he saves the day, he gets the girl, he stops the bad guy without any emotional relevance. Like, he's still a superhero throughout.
It deserves
superhero and
respect.
the character.
Yeah.
We're on a boat at the end again.
And then, but then this movie comes along and it's like Charlie keeps saying, like, it, you know, like, we're just going to have fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't deserve respect, but it wasn't asking for it.
Exactly. It doesn't give a
We're just doing silly shit, and, you know, it's going to be fun,
exactly.
and we're going to have fucking gorillas and, you know, blow up your pants, kid.
Yeah.
And car flippy thing.
To recite our order, it is Goldfinger. Ugh.
Don't die on me, buddy.
As I throw up in
He
my
was
mouth.
bitten by the bug.
Bitten by the bug.
Charlie, you take it away.
Okay. Goldfinger from Russia with love.
With love.
Oh, shit.
Dr. No.
Dr.
Honor
No.
Majesty's Secret Service.
Thunderball. Diamonds are forever.
Forever.
You only live twice.
Twice.
I think that list is perfect. Again, I still think we have a solid rock hard diamond list going on here.
Yes.
And
yes.
and we are at number 007. This is episode 007.
If knowing what to expect with this movie, I could see myself wanting to rewatch this one rather than rewatch You Only Live Twice. Especially knowing Bond literally has a boner joke in this movie. Unless, like, what? You've caught me with more than my hands up? Like,
You've caught me with more than my hands.
unless it's
up.
something else, it's got to be a boner joke, right?
Yeah, very important moment in film history. James Bond making a boner joke.
I'm afraid you've caught me with more than my hands up.
The fact that this is Connery's last film and we'd already toasted to him, I would have said Connery.
And he's dead.
But because I think these two characters are the epitome of this movie. Not only are they f***ing goofy, but they're probably the most delightful and most fun, entertaining characters to watch in this movie is Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint.
They elevated the Bond universe to that level of ridiculousness that straight up opened the door for Mike Myers and Austin Powers.
Like,
and all
we
that.
have them to thank for Austin Powers.
Yes.
So
this toast goes to Putter Smith, who plays Mr. Kidd, and Bruce Glover, Bruce Glover, who plays Mr. Wint.
Yeah.
To the Bond versus first LGBTQ plus assassins.
First
Cheers
and
to that.
only assassins.
Cheers.
We f***ed Bond in the ass until he died.
Finger, finger,
Gold
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 finger, finger.